Welcome to our Alpha Anywhere demo and QA. I'm Dave McCormick from Alpha Software. I'm pleased to be rejoined by Dion McCormick, no relation, who has been on vacation for the last 2 weeks. We've had a substitute over the last couple weeks for Martin, who's also here with us today. So I can't wait to get started. A couple things we should know if you're new to this. If you have any questions, please type them in. Any Alpha Anywhere questions at all, type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar interface. It's your questions that make this webinar interesting and keep it rolling and help other people learn. So go ahead and start typing them in at any point. Second thing is this, like our other sessions, are recorded, and you can find a copy of these webinar recordings at videos.alphasoftware.com. So let's begin. Dion, let me just take you off mute here. Hello, Dion. Are you there? Hello.
There we go. Hey, welcome. Good to be back. It's good to see you.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and...
You hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you fine. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter so you can share your screen.
There you go. You should see my screen in a second.
Yep, it sure is.
All right. Good. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I missed you all while I was gone. We had a wonderful trip down to the coast of Texas and at the beaches, and so refreshed and ready to go. Today, again, for people who are new, my name is Dion McCormick and Lead Solutions Engineer for Alpha Software. This weekly webinar is about you, so very important for us is to have you ask us questions. So take the time to go to your GoToWebinar control panel. There's a question section. Go ahead and put those in. Dave will be monitoring those, and we'll get through them. The cool thing about questions is they do two things. One is that, A, they help satisfy your requirements immediately, but also it gives us an idea of what people are looking for out there. We have so many exciting things come up. There's going to be a huge amount of content we're going to be covering in the near future with the upcoming new release of Alpha, specifically with the new clipboard capability. And with that in mind, I'd like to start out and let everybody know is that we have the Alpha DEF CON coming in September, a little over a month away. It is going to be a phenomenal event. And if you have attended, I know you've enjoyed it. If you haven't, make sure to make plans. It's cool for two reasons. One is that you're going to get the skinny on all the new capabilities coming out with Alpha, and these are really groundbreaking capabilities. It's really going to take what's already a very powerful tool and really take it to a next level. You're going to be able to build things that people couldn't even imagine building a year or two ago. Secondly, there's some phenomenal training that's taking place, specifically the pre-conference training on the 15th. And this, again, will be focusing on the new technologies, the new mobile capabilities, and just phenomenal. And you're really going to enjoy it. And I guess there's a third aspect is that you're going to build your relationships with other like-minded developers. And these are people you can tap into to help you as you build your solutions around Alpha. And it's just a really great event. And Alpha does a phenomenal job putting this together. A lot of really valuable time, valuable content is provided, so you really get your money's worth out of it. So if you want to, you can go to, and let me show you here, go to the Alpha Software homepage. In the upper corner, you're going to see Alpha DEF CON 2005. Click on that. You will be taken to the Alpha DEF CON 2005. Yeah, we're taking it back. It's a time machine.
That's old school.
It's like crazy. Yeah, we're going to be doing no doc loans at this in the Alpha DEF CON 2005. It's going to be very exciting. But it has a lot of information about that. One thing that's really cool is the 2014 recap, which shows you a lot of the content from last year, and also, most importantly, the Register Now button, where you can register for this. So do take the time. Come visit us up there. It's going to be a great event, a lot of great content for you, and it'll be well worth your time and effort. So with that, what I'd like to do today is we started this before I left, specifically talking about notifications. And I'm going to do a quick refresh, but I also wanted to show you one other thing that I think a lot of people get a lot of benefit out of it, and I get a lot of questions around this. And that's different methods to show notifications to people. So with that, I'm going to switch over to my development environment. And for everybody out there, please enter in your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel. We really enjoy those, and after I go through this quick demonstration, probably about 5-10 minutes, then we'll come back and start answering those questions. So with that, going to go over here. Now,
hey, Dion, are you using a different mic or something? I hear a bit of an echo.
I have shown a way in which you can use a very powerful feature inside of the grid component to basically have grids be used to be as a notification tool for people who are using it online. So if I go back into my design, I'm in a grid right here. I'm showing you the notification grid. It's in the live preview, so you can see that there. This is connected to a backend database, in this case Access, but this could have easily been SQL Server, etc. So you'll notice on this first page I've got ALFKey and I've got this region is currently of OK, and note the color and everything else. So I'm now going to go back into my database here. I'm going to go into the region. I'm going to say problem. So like a piece of data has changed on the back end. And then I'm going to exit out of here, get back in here, and you're going to notice something in a few moments. And I hit it just right, so it'll give us the time to see there. There you go. Notice what happened. The system, and you didn't see any screen refresh or anything, the system updated the color coding for that item to identify that that had achieved a state to notify the user that there was an issue. So this is a very simple way to do it. Now I'm going to go over and show you how I did that, but I'm going to also add a really cool thing that I've noticed people really enjoy on this. So you'll notice that we're tied to this Access database, and again, in this case, I'm monitoring the region code. And if I go out of there and go back into here, or I'm sorry, into here, I've updated. You'll notice there. Now check this out too. If I go to this annotar and I say problem here and a problem here, you'll notice when I go back in, and this will take a moment because it's on about a 30-second refresh cycle, you'll notice that both of those got updated for me automatically. And I'll show you how I applied that there. One thing I like to emphasize is that the fact that you'll notice that it didn't do a complete screen refresh. It just updated the color coding and data for these particular items. So it's very efficient in terms of not causing the person to have a whole screen refresh. So let's go back into the design. I'm going to go in and I'm going to show you two things. First, I went into my fields and I go to my region field right here, and you'll notice I have a conditional style. So what I did is I put on region a conditional style, and basically I said if region is equal to problem, change the color to red. So this is so when the grid first shows, it's going to look at each region and then apply this formatting as a conditional style. If it is P problem, then it's going to do yellow. So if I go back into mine and adjust it, you could, so you can have different color schemes based on danger, warning, etc. But you'll notice it's all done through these conditional styles right here. Now the other key magic piece is that in my properties here, if I go down to lower part, where is that? You'll notice something on here. There is a property called Auto Refresh Grid. And basically this is a on-off property. And when you turn that on, what it's going to do is, given the interval in seconds, in this case 10 seconds, every 10 seconds the grid is going to automatically query the database or whatever data source it's at, look and reapply all the rules, so our conditional formatting. So as you notice, when I edited it in here and changed this, say, to OK, what happens is I've changed in the data source, and then every 10 seconds this grid's going to update itself to update that. So it's a very easy way for you to create a powerful way to notify the user, and you'll notice my OK because it refreshed it right there. Now one other thing is, this is cool to have like color schemes there. But often I get a lot of comments of, well, how can I have sort of an icon that shows people where the issue is? So I'm going to go to Fields. I'm going to go ahead and insert a field. So I'm at my fields inside my grid here. I'm going to insert, and I'm going to insert an image. And I'm going to click OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and make that image the first thing here. So if I go in and actually show you what it looks like right now, I haven't selected anything for that image. So you'll notice it looks almost identical to what I had before. So what's cool about this image is I'm going to go into the image definition. Now the image definition is where you define what that image should be, but it has a very powerful function. You can actually do what's called a conditional image, meaning that you can change the image that's displayed based on some variable. So to show you an example of this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a condition. The expression I'm going to say is 1 equal 1, meaning I'm just going to say this is always true. And then the image I'm going to select here is going to be a green button there. And to show you what I did then, let me go ahead and show you that a little bit. So I've defined my expression here, and then it's asking me which image. I click select. I can use a built-in image. I could use an image that is in my file that I'm, like I got off the net or bought an icon package. I could actually even use CSS icons, but I'm going to go ahead and use built-in image. So I click here, and you'll notice I have a ton of icons that ships with Alpha. So I know one's called green, so I have like this little green orb there. And I click insert. It's picked up that image. So it basically says if 1 equals 1, then show this image. And that's my first condition there. So I click OK. I'm going to save this. We'll go ahead and do the live preview. And you'll notice now that in front of every one of my items, I have a little green icon because it's always 1 equals 1. So kind of boring, but it shows you how you can insert an image in your grid. Now, let's go back into that image here. Let's make it a little more interesting. Let's go ahead and edit that condition. And let's say if I'm going to get rid of my 1 equals 1, I'm going to insert field name, and I'm going to put in the region, because we're looking at that region code, is not equal to, or is equal to, let's say, problem. Okay. So what this is saying is that if my region column here has anything other than problem, then show the green orb, meaning that, I'm looking for that problem state. So I'm going to go ahead and click there. Okay. So now I'm going to click OK. I'm going to save this, and let's go ahead and look and see what it's done. In a moment, you'll see. Notice that this one's green, but this one is blank because it didn't satisfy that rule to say it showed the green orb. Basically, it says, okay, it's problem. So now let me go into design. Let me go back into my image, and let's add a new condition. And I'm going to say if region is equal to problem, and I can make that uppercase, lowercase, then the image I want to pick is I'm going to do a red and show a red image. Okay? So now I have two rules. The first rule basically says if it's not equal to problem, then say it's green. If it's equal to problem, then give me a red. And so now I click OK. I click Save, and I'm going to go ahead and preview this for you. And you'll notice that I have a green and I have a red icon here because the item is problem. Okay. So let me show you how this is dynamic. So let's go ahead and go into my database here. Let's say this is okay now, and watch what happens in a moment when it refreshes. It's on a 10-second cycle. There we go. Two things happen. This changed to okay, and my color coding changed, but you'll also notice that the icon right here changed from a red to a green. And again, if I go back into my database, and let's say we've got a problem on this one, and update that, and I go back in here, you'll notice in a few moments, as it refreshes after the 10-second cycle, it's now got, oh, I guess it already refreshed, I missed it, but it's got the red there. And what's very important, I like to show everybody this. Oops, let me make sure. Am I coming through okay?
You are coming through okay, although you sound a little different now than you did at the beginning of the webinar.
Oh yeah, let me hold on. I'm going to adjust my headphones. Wait a second.
Okay, great.
Okay, does that sound any better?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay. Yeah, my headset's kind of, or my USB port's starting to die. So let me go ahead and share. I want to
Have
show
you tried duct tape? Apparently that's the answer to all your
indeed.
problems. Yeah.
Let me do one thing.
Yep.
Let me go ahead and show you while this is launching. I'm going to open this up in Chrome. So I'm going to show you this actually working inside the web browser. Bear with me. Hopefully that sounds a little better now.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so it's even better looking here because obviously I'm not in my development environment. That I have my region here. I have my buttons here. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to change this to OK. Go back to my browser, and you'll notice I've got green across the screen. And if I go back in, say we've got a problem here, go to here. You'll notice in a moment, give it a moment, 10-second cycle. There we go. We got a problem, and there. And notice I'm in my browser, and the whole browser didn't flicker because all it's doing is updating the data inside of my item there. So that's kind of where I'm going to hold off here, but I wanted to show you how, kind of refresh it from our last time, that you can use the grid component as a very simple way to do monitoring using the combination of the grid component and the auto refresh. And you can use it either through, in this case, putting some conditional formatting on fields so I can get it down to the actual field level, or at a higher level you can add these images in there and allow you to then update it so that the image changes if there's a problem. And there's other things you can do too. You could actually refresh this and actually apply a filter so it only shows the items that have an issue or something like that. Very powerful, very simple, and works really well because you'll notice that I'm running in the web browser right here. And what it's doing is it's making an AJAX callback back to the server to say, give me the updated data, and then based on that information, it refreshes the data on the server, on the web browser, and it's a very small transaction. Now you got to be a little careful on this, and I'll just put this caveat in here, is that if you have 1,000 people with this up on their screen at one time, you're going to get 1,000 requests going against the server at all times. So you have to be a little judicious. And usually people are on a minute, 5 minute, and they're going to hit based on the timing of refreshing there. So you just got to be a little careful, is that if, each one of these refreshes is a callback to the server. If you have a ton of people on there, you may overwhelm your server if everybody's doing these refreshes. But I usually find it's only for certain people and certain dashboards. So it's be able to handle there. So that's my demonstration for today, and that's my notifications there. What I'd like to do now is hand it back over to Dave McCormick, and he can review the questions, all the fabulous questions that have been
all of the questions are fabulous, but we don't have a lot of them, so I'd like to encourage people to go ahead and start typing in your questions, please, if you wouldn't mind.
Don't demerits.
Exactly, no demerits. We know who you are. So just a quick question off the bat is, okay, sure, this is great. It's working in a grid. Can you do something like that in a list control on a UX component? So you're building something for mobile this time.
You can. What you can do, and I'll go back into here, and I apologize, my USB port is starting to die, so this machine's ready to go into the shop. When you have and what I'm going to do is, for the new people here, what I'm going to do is create a new UX. Let's see, do I have a UX already ready to go? I'll just create a new one here, okay? And I'll go UX here. Okay, so what a UX is, for people who are not familiar, is our form builder. And there's a very powerful capability called the list component. So I'm going to add a list component. I'm going to call this list customers. Okay. Now, when you're building, remember, when you're building an alpha solution, we have a whole bunch of quick setup genies. So I'm going to click here, and the connection string I'm going to use is called connection, which is that access database. Again, is going to be identical if you're using it for SQL Server, etc. I'm going to select customers. Okay. For field list, I want to go ahead and just select a few example fields here. Okay. And then I'm going to click OK. So I've added a list, and I'm going to say this is a mobile. So let me go ahead and just show you what this looks like. We'll go list refresh UX. Okay, so I'm going to go into my live preview here, show you what it looks like. Okay, oh, I'm going to have to adjust something. I have it a little off here, so the thing I need to adjust here is, come on, let's go there. Is I'm going to fill the container. Okay, so let's go to live preview again. What's going on here? That should have been. Bear with me. Why is it not doing fill container? Huh. Sorry there, everybody. Close and reopen.
The excitement of live demos.
I know. Okay. And let's go to working preview. I don't know why that's doing that. I'm sorry, everybody. Something's amiss here. I'm not sure what's causing that. What you can do is you can click this button, fill container, and basically it shows the whole container. And so this should fill the whole thing. What's going on is it's kind of there, and I'm not sure why it's not doing that. Something about this. Let me open up an existing here. Okay, let's go ahead and, sorry, I'm again having my hardware, so that's what's causing some of it there. Let me open up a different list that I've already created, and so we'll see if that's already set up for us. Okay. Okay, so that's where we should be at. Okay, so if I use plus, you can see it's filling the whole container there. I've got something up here. I'm not sure what's going on here, so I apologize. But let me go ahead and go back to this here, and I'll just do the example here. Now, everything that's done on Alpha is done using the Action JavaScript Builder for behaviors. So what you can do in this list properties here is that in our grid, we had a function that would auto-refresh this grid, or I'm sorry, would auto-refresh the grid. In this case, what we need to do is we're going to add a button here. And, oh, I know what's going on. I think what's going on in the background here. Let me go ahead and close that window. Okay. So what we can do is for the UX itself, we can go to Properties, and we can go down here to what's called timed events. Let's see if I can get that there. Okay. So what I want to do is refresh that list on an ongoing basis. So I have a command in my properties called hasOnTimer event right here. And this is equivalent to my grid properties where I had a auto refresh grid. Now, in this case, it knows to automatically refresh the grid. That's what it does there. But now what I can do is I can go to the hasOnTimer event for this UX. I can enable it. I can then say, what is the event interval? In this case, seconds. So very similar to what we had right there. And then we can go to our client-side event, to the OnTimer event. And you'll notice here I've got a client-side event called OnTimer. And in here, I can then insert Action JavaScript or type my own JavaScript that will automatically be fired every so many seconds. So to show you how this would work is I would go ahead, I'm just going to show you if I go dialog.object.refresh list data, list of customers. Okay, so that's the quick and dirty if you just want to use there. So every so many seconds determined by in my properties the on-timer event interval it will fire the on-timer client-side event and do a refresh of the list data called list customers. And again, you got to be a little careful. If you have a bunch of, if you have a whole bunch of offline data, it's going to take the time.
Hey there, Dion. Did we lose audio from you? Dion, are you there? Right, hang on a second.
And I'm going to edit that.
Oh, good, you're back.
And now I have my complete universe of refresh items to do there. So let's say go to list control actions, refresh data, list customers, save that, and then I'm going to copy this, and then I can say there. So in this case, I can run this action called refresh, this action JavaScript I built, and then that will allow you to go through, and it will do the same thing as that little typed script right there. So again, to achieve the same results, go to Properties, As On Timer Event, enable that, set the number of seconds, go to your Events client side, look for On Timer, and you put any JavaScript code here or Action JavaScript to then execute. And again, that could be nice. You could actually just say, okay, look at a certain piece of data on the back end and flip an icon on the user interface. You have complete flexibility in terms of what you want to do. And the neat thing about it is that you don't have to write a whole bunch of on-timer events, because this will just be fired. Whatever's inside this on-timer will be fired every 60 seconds to actually to run, and it handles that for you automatically. So that's how you accomplish the same kind of situation with the UX that you do with say a grid component there. So I hope that answers that question.
So that answers certainly the on refresh portion of it, but is there also a concept of conditional images or things like that for a list, so that you could get it to light up in red when a value had changed to something else?
Run that question by me again. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so that definitely answers the question of how do you do the auto refresh for a list, which is super useful. But what if you wanted it to light up red like you did in the grid example for notification?
Oh, okay. Then what you would do is in your list itself, what the behavior of how this is doing is that you're basically using the list information in my grid component. Let me go back to my grid. I'm using in my fields a conditional style. So that's how I achieve that kind of different coloring based on the data. And all the refresh is doing is loading the new current data in there. So if I go into a list and I go into my list of customers, I can go to my fields here and I can go to, say, address or city, and you'll notice something here. I have something called conditional style, which is equivalent to what you saw before. Yep. And you can set your equivalent. So what you would do is go in your list, you would use the same method of go to the fields here, select the field that you want to flip, and then do the conditional style, and then add your condition to say, if this field name has problem, then make it red. You can also add in a dynamic image. And again, this image would work much like the grid. The list control borrows a lot of the same philosophies from the grid control. You could also add in here a custom control. And what a custom control is, and I won't go through that now, is your own HTML. And that HTML can be conditional based on other fields or a field in the system. And therefore, you could actually completely re-render a small piece of HTML in a list, like flip an icon or flip whatever you want, by saying, okay, in this situation, show this HTML, and this situation, show that HTML. And the way you would do that is through what's called a custom control in the list. So there's a couple different ways, but the simplest way to do it is just use the conditional style and then that refresh performance, and you'll see the same result happening.
That is excellent. So we have a bunch more questions.
Oh, good,
Yeah,
good.
I guess that's excellent. So here's actually there are a couple good technical ones, but one has to do with when data are refreshed in, I guess, a grid. How much data is being transferred? Is it the whole data set that's coming back? Is it just the visible data set that's coming back, or is it just what's changed that is coming back?
It is, in the case of that, it's only sending back what has changed. So basically it's sending back a small portion of the data to the front end to re-render, because it's smart enough on the back end to say, okay, this grid is structured this week. So you actually can minimize the amount of data there. A trick just for everybody to know is that in your, like especially your list control, in your grid, what the grids are very efficient. It's going to use a dynamic population process to keep the amount of performance down. In a list, what you'll do to achieve the same result is you go down on the data source, you can say paginate data, and therefore you can return just a subset of data that you need for the application at one time on the mobile. And that, if you have a million rows, you really only want to bring back enough for them to kind of look at a couple pages of rows kind of scenario. Mm-hmm. So again, you're not going to reload the whole amount of data. It's only going to bring back what is changing on the screen at that one time.
Cool. And sort of a follow-up bonus question on that one is there a tool, like in Chrome or something, that lets you see what data is being transferred, like if you're trying to debug?
I'm not sure about what data is being transferred, but what you can do is that, let me go ahead and go in here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to try this out. I'm going to put this in Chrome. Okay, so I'm putting the grid in Chrome right now, so bear with me. I'm going to go to here to the menu button and go to More Tools, Developers Tools. Okay, and I'm going to put it down below so it's a little easier to see. So first you get to see all of your data and everything else right there, but you can look at what's called a timeline, and what will happen in the timeline is this will actually show you load times for anything that's going on within it. It's not active right now, but this is a very powerful tool that allows you, you'll notice that every 10 seconds, the mouse cursor is going to a little circle thing because it's doing a refresh against the back-end data. And what you can do using the Chrome tools is actually see what is transpiring, how long certain things are taking to load. So it's a very powerful way to get at least an idea of how much data is being transferred and how much speed. As far as the actual underlying amount of data, I'm not sure. I don't know off the top of my head how you would actually see the core data inside there.
Great. Let's see a few others here. Let me grab one. Someone pointed out that they have used in a grid the auto refresh, but they found that the record pointer always goes back to the first record in the grid. Do you know how you keep it so it doesn't move?
Yeah, notice that? Watch, I'll just put my record pointer here.
Yep.
And when you refresh, it jumps to the top. I don't know of any way off the top of my head. The only way possible is that, I don't know, because let me see something here. When you touch a row, you could actually record what row you're on. Mm-hmm. And then in the grid, and this is just kind of talking off the top of my head, let's see. Okay, so what is possible is that inside here you have a whole bunch of client-side events. And so what you could do is, it's possible, let me go to client-side events here. Sorry, select, okay. So on row select, I could, record the row number here. Okay, so now I have that and I can put that in a JavaScript variable. Put in JavaScript variable, okay? Then what you can do is grid refresh. Let's do this. When on grid refresh, I could then grab that variable and then use JavaScript to set the current row back to the one before. Okay, and to find out that JavaScript, you'll notice down below we have insert grid method, and this shows you all the different grid methods that are available in JavaScript. So we can say, let's see, set the active row. Okay, right there. If you'll notice, grid object set focus. So I can put that in there, and this row number is in the JavaScript. I set it. So what I do is when I select a row, I put it into a JavaScript variable. That's going to be stored. It's persistent on the web browser. And then what I'm going to do is when the grid refreshes, it's going to fire this, and I take that grid or that JavaScript variable, put it right in here, and then what the grid's going to do is set the focus back to that row. So that's how I would address that issue there.
Excellent. Let's grab another one here. Yeah, here's a good one. Is there an easy way to create a query that uses date ranges like they do in Access? For example, I want to see something that was in the last quarter, or the last 12 months, or the last year, or something like that from a drop-down if you were doing a search. They didn't specify whether they're talking grid or
No, I let's see. Okay, so you want date ranges. There's a couple tricks to do that. Well, a clarification question would be, when you're setting up a grid or a query for a grid, you define the arguments for that grid. So let's say it's, start date of type date and end date of type date. Okay, so the first step is that you can define these arguments for this grid. And then what you can do is you can prompt for it, or you can get it from a variable kind of scenario. So the way actually, let me think about that. The important thing is you need those arguments, because then what you do, and then always prompt for a value. Okay. So now what we can do is in our filter, we can say, if let's say this was date is greater than or equal to, and then insert the argument here, and the date field is less than or equal to then end date. Okay, so these are called arguments, and what I can now do is pass arguments to this from the UX control to set up those parameters. Now, that's just quick and dirty, but there's a great, and let me go ahead and find it for you real quick. Alpha 5v11 power searching. I'm power searching for the power searching. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and put this into the chat area for everybody. Okay, there you go. And basically this shows you, it's a series of videos that show you how to have a UX control which has a set of search criteria with an embedded grid, and when you change the search criteria in the UX control, it would then do that. So the cool thing is you could set your date ranges there. Oh, I see, it's popping up, so you can see it a little bit more. So on the top, you can see the date range. You could set like a date control and a date start and date end, and then use this same technique to power search the grid that's embedded in the UX, and it works very, very well. And reports work a very similar way. You can do the same thing with reports. So go to that link, watch these series of videos, and I think that will go a long way towards addressing how to set up those pieces there. And what you can do is you could like pre-format things, like you say Q1 is this date to this date, and then use that kind of data to then feed to the grid. So if you want to do things on like more, not just explicit dates, you could pre-create sort of drop-downs that already have that data in it, and then you can just feed that criteria to the grid. But again, go to that power search a grid using a dialog component, and it will show you some great ways to do it. And you'll notice in our example, they actually have date ranges. So you'll actually see how they've used date ranges to power search a grid.
Excellent. So I've had a couple questions over the last week by people interested in using the signature capture control. I was wondering if you'd be able to give a quick demo of that.
Sure. Okay. So the important thing to understand about a signature capture control is, first and foremost, go ahead and create a new control here, and I'm going to use a web component UX because it is a control that's on the form. Okay. And so I'm going to go to my controls. So for the people who are new, this is my UX builder, which is like our form. And actually, you know what? I think I already have a single signature capture control already built. So let me go ahead and go into here. Okay. Okay, so let me go ahead and go into working preview. You'll notice that I have a set of, basically I have a database bound, and I'll walk you through this, database bound document. So let me walk you through this. So I have a UX control, and this UX control is data bound to the database. So I'm going to go into data binding. I'm going to click on bind the controls, specify the table, and I have a table in my database called signatures. And if I go actually in here to access, and again, this will work the same way, I have a database that has a field, a unique ID, a name, and then the signature data, which for the access is like long binary data, but it could also be blob data. So there's a specific table in it. In my user interface, or in my UX, I have bound this UX to that table. Okay? So now, if I go into my controls, I have my controls here like that name field. So remember, I had name and signature. So I have a name field here. And if I go down here, you'll see that this name field is updatable, and I'm connecting it to the signatures to the field name. Now, very powerful is on the signature capture control is a data-bound control, meaning think of it as an editor, a special type of editor that stores picture data into the database. So you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, I've got a signature capture right here control that's under our data controls. I already have one out on here called signature. And you'll notice down here that I've data bound that signature control. It's updatable. It uses that table, but it's data bound to the signature field. And if I go back into my database, you'll notice I have a signature field that's called long binary data, because for access, that's how you save sort of essentially graphic data or image data. For SQL Server and others, it's going to probably be a blog or long text. I forget which ones they are specifically for that. So the cool thing about that is that the signature control takes care of everything for you. Once you've placed it on your form and you've associated it with the database, if I go back into my live preview here, you'll see that it's rendered this control right here, which is, it says signature, it has the area and the sign piece right here. And so if I click sign and I go and put something on here and click accept, you'll notice that it's taken that information and it's handled all that for me. So I didn't have to write any code, JavaScript, or anything else. Like if I go, oh, I don't like that, so I want to sign that with my traditional Texas signature, I can do that. So it kind of puts there. So, yeah.
I like that one.
So trust me, I came out of I did some real estate, and there are people still signing, put your mark here for quick claim deeds and things like that for oil properties.
But
so
it's your X, though. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a data bound control. Now you'll notice something. Even though I've clicked and said, sign, accept, if I were to move off this and move back, you'll notice it didn't save it. So I have to click sign, accept, and then submit this. And what it's doing is it's writing that data. So it's just like any other control. So it's basically capturing that data. The cool thing now is that it's saved it in the database. So when I come back here, since this is data bound, it's automatically rendering that saved value. So in here, if I were to look at what this graphic image looks like, it would show you basically that image of an X in the system from there. So a signature just think of a signature control as another data-bound, like a text field or a checkbox or a radio button, and all you have to do is data bind your control or your system, put in a signature capture, make sure it's data bound to a field that will capture that information. Again, for Access, it's long binary. For MySQL, I think it's blob, and then for SQL Server, I think it's long text. And then what's great is then the system will take care of everything else for you doing that. And that works same way also on mobile. It uses the same methodology where you're data binding it to a UX or data binding it to a list control, which has the same kind of field data. And so this works the same thing on a mobile app as it does on, say, a desktop app.
Excellent. Question here for you. This one has to do with having a, I just want to make sure I get this question right. Basically, a person has a grid, and the grid has got just 2 columns in it. The first column is an ID that's never visible. The second column, though, is a text value, and it is visible. But now here's the catch. What appears in that text column is either the word active, hold, or closed. Sounds like some sort of ticketing system. But what's actually stored in the underlying database is the number 1, 2, or 3.
Okay.
Can we represent something like that in a grid?
Sure. Okay, so let me go to Web Component here and go to Grid. Okay. So I'm going to create a new grid. And I'm just going to pick data source here just for our purposes of here. And I'm going to select just a table. Let's say it's just, I'm going to, just for the purposes here. Okay. So in you're going to have a fields. Okay. You're going to have that ID field here. You want to put that over there, and then you make that hide column. So what's going to happen is that will be in your grid, but it will not be shown. Then you're going to add that other thing. So let's take an example here where city is saved not as a text. So like in my database right now, if I were to, let's show you what that looks like. It's city. If I go to live preview and show you what this looks like real quick, you're just going to have the hidden column here and the city name there. But let's say city was not just text, was more a drop-down, as you said, of there's a unique ID like 1, 2, 3, and the display for the individual is there. So what I'm going to do is go to city. It's currently of control type label. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select here, and I'm going to make this a drop-down box. I'm going to click OK. So now the city is a drop-down box. Now I can go into my choices here, and I can put my choices. I can say, okay, London is 1, Berlin is 2, and let's see, New York is 3. So what it's saying is that the person will see London, but the value of that is 1. The person will see Berlin, but the value is 2, etc. Now, this is static. I could be clicking dynamic and then pointing to a different table, say a city list, where I have a different table that has a list of all the cities, you know, with their unique ID and their name. So then this would automatically populate that. But for our purposes for this demo, I'm going to keep it there. Now you'll notice now when I do my live preview, it's not going to look good because there, but you'll see that these are showing because they're text in nature kind of scenario. So they're not working properly because I'm not pointing to the proper information right here. But then what you do is you would use the drop-down list to select the human readable name, and then underneath it, it's going to actually save the ID or computer name to the back-end pieces there. Because you can use a drop-down box to allow you to have that human readable versus unique ID in the background is what's actually saved in the table. And that doesn't have to be numbers. You could have it as, like, if I look at the choices here, London could be, you know, London. New York could be New York, like an abbreviated version of it. and then Berlin could be Berlin. Whatever you structure, it's up to you. The first item before the bar is what the human sees. The second part is what actually gets stored into the database that's associated with this grid.
Yep. Excellent. Let's see, we're running low on questions here. Let's see what else we've got. Well, that might be it. Guys, submit your questions. We still have 10 minutes. If you'd like to use it up, we'd love to answer your questions. Let me just make sure I've got everyone. I didn't miss anyone.
I'm not sure if I answered that correctly. I mean,
I did actually just ask the person who did it, and they said that it seemed like I think we got the right answer. Oh, here's an interesting one. Accordions on a list control. So here's the actual question. Someone has seen an example which Selwyn, and he thinks using code, had a. Let me just read the actual question. Find it here. This is code. Is there a way to do like an accordion style drop down on a list control, kind of like you can with a grid control? In other words.
I'm going to have to research that.
Yeah.
I'd like to take that up for next week, just because I want to do it justice, and I haven't done that.
Finally, we stumped you today. We were trying to stump you the entire time. Excellent. All right. Well,
I must have sand in the brain or something like that. Control.
Leftover.
So it's control on a list control, correct?
On a list control, yeah. So either an accordion on a list or the ability to drop down. And I think what he might be referring to is a row expander type thing, but accordion would be very similar. So
okay, I'll do some research and have that information.
Cool.
On how to do that.
Excellent. Anything else here, guys?
And Ben, who was asking the question about the other, be glad we can follow up and help address that one issue. I want to make sure you get what you need out there.
Okay, actually it looks like we do have someone who wants to ask a question, but I'll actually put them on live, so I don't know if you're there, Ben. If not,
wow.
I know we're going to unmute a member of the audience. This can be dangerous. We happen to know that this guy's been vetted, though. So, hello, Ben, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
Keep the language clean.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So can you make a drop-down list that has multiple columns?
That's a good question. I know you can do that in a UX control. Not necessarily a grid, but in a UX you can actually have a grid be a drop-down list. But in a, let's see here, drop-down, I'm not sure. I'd have to double-check on that. Text box, let's see, happen here. Do I have choices here? I don't know. The idea is what you want to have on the drop-down is the multiple columns of information that's showing for the drop-down.
Correct. Like a static, like the example I gave before was an ID number, and then active, and then maybe a description of what active is.
This is how in those ID numbers and descriptions, are those static or they're coming from another table?
Well, in this example, let's say they're static.
Okay. So, I mean, you can, if you want, let's make this a text. You can mimic this by just saying, you know, 1-London-XYZ. And then what you can do is if it's coming from a table, you can actually build this dynamically from the other table using a concat in your dynamic screen. So just to show you how this would look is that normally what you do is you say which connection string, you point to that other table, let's say it's the employees table, you tell it which, like you want to show their last name and store their employee ID. So this will show a drop down of last names, but it's showing the employee ID. But now you can go into Expert, and you'll notice this is just a little piece of SQL query. You can do this. You can say concat last name, comma, first name. So now what's going to happen is that when it renders the drop-down box, it's going to have last name dash first name as what the person sees, but it's still storing the employee ID. And this can get as fancy as you want. You can just use the SQL concat. So you don't have to create a special view. You can actually do it right inside the SQL select statement for that drop-down box. Very straightforward, works really good and lightning fast.
Is that concat command an alpha command?
No, that's actually a SQL command. So any SQL command can be used in here because you'll notice this is just a SQL command. And for MySQL, it's concat. For SQL Server, I believe you just say plus.
Oh, it gets messy because you have to cast it. Well, you probably won't have to do it here, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of gets a little, but any SQL is allowed. It's just passing it to the database and getting the results back.
But so you can't make a drop down that has last name in one column and then first name in another column.
No, not within a grid that I'm aware of. Within a, I'll check on that to double check. With a UX control, you can actually make a lookup for a field that actually literally shows a grid to do the lookup. It's very powerful. With all the functions of a grid. But within an actual grid itself, I think you're limited to just kind of more simple drop-down kind of structures. But I'll double check.
Okay. Just one final thing about the static list. You have to just put the display value first when you do a multi-column?
Yes, you do. So if it's a static, the nomenclature is display value, vertical bar, stored value.
I think so that's where I got stuck.
Yeah, so what you can do, everything in front of this bar is what the human will see. Everything behind is what's going to actually be stored in that value. Now notice if you want to group, there is some methods here. If you notice here to group the choices, inner group headers enclosed with these brackets here. So you can play a little bit with that. If you'll notice cars here kind of scenario. So there is some functionality to make this look a little bit with that from there. So let's try that.
Thank you very much for answering my question.
Here we'll go 1, 2, 3 cities.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our time here today. If you have other questions for us, though, by all means send them off to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, @alphasoftware.com. A copy of today's recording will be available in a day or two at videos.alphasoftware.com. So I just want to thank everyone for participating. Thank you very much, Dion, for presenting, and welcome back. So we hope to see you guys at a future webinar. Take care and goodbye.